Hi, my name is Ben, and I'm a keyboard content creator. If there's one comment I always get when talking about prices in this hobby, is that mechanical keyboards are way too expensive. Names like GMK and Keycult always come up as prime examples of overpriced brands. And honestly, I get it. Prices of mechanical keyboards and accessories can go up to hundreds and even thousands of dollars, when at the very core, a mechanical keyboard is what it is. A fancy set of plastic put on plastic switches installed in sometimes a plastic case. Lots of plastic. To the average person, a mechanical keyboard is a luxury item. After all, why spend more than $20 when keyboards come free with most laptop purchases? And yet, many of us, myself included, do that. Why? What are we really paying for? Some might say, you are buying more than just a keyboard in this hobby. Let's start from the top. This video was inspired by a debate I had with a fellow community member, which made me question my own biases. What makes people spend such ridiculous amounts of money in this hobby? Is there something cultural about this hobby, like how sneaker culture has its own roots in sports? So I began digging to find out what are the factors that influence spending behaviors. So I started digging into this question, reading sociological and psychological research to better understand the factors driving spending behaviors in the mechanical keyboard world. Today, I'll share what I found and unpack the forces shaping this seemingly irrational hobby. Let's begin with the psychology behind consumer behavior. One of the foundational theories I came across is the free choice paradigm, theorized by psychologist and professor Jack Williams Bram. It describes the internal conflict people feel when making decisions that go against their beliefs, what we call cognitive dissonance. Say a buyer decides to splurge $500 on a keyboard. They often justify their decision after the purchase in ways that align with their values, resolving the dissonance. It is noteworthy that this justification is done after the choice has been made, not before, sort of like a confirmation bias. But what drives this justification? Did it appeal to him visually? Was it a good enough value to him? The free choice paradigm usually studies behaviors one-dimensionally, meaning that they narrowed it down to one cause and one effect. Later on, his work led to modern researchers like Rajiv Batra, who attempt to describe factors that affect consumer behaviors in two dimensions: hedonistic and utilitarian. Hedonistic meaning things that pertains to pleasure, things that evokes feelings, while utilitarian meant things that relate to your primary needs like food and water. Think about it. You might upgrade because aluminum cases are more durable and HE switches actuate faster, or because it evokes an emotional response. Perhaps the keyboard just sounds amazing or looks stunning. But are two dimensions all there is to it? It seemed too simplistic to broadly categorize all decision-making processes under these two umbrellas, especially when there's an obvious flaw. The hedonistic aspect neglects instances where emotions can be intertwined with people's perception of the practicality of some products, and poorly explains their behavior. Similarly, the utilitarian dimension can be too narrow in its definition. For example, when a hungry person devours a burger, there's often a mix between the two motivations. You want the burger to fill your stomach, but also taste good at the same time. Similarly, if you want to improve your response time during gaming, HE is a must, but you will definitely appreciate it if the aesthetics aspect speak to you too. Therefore, there has to be something that lies beyond these two dimensions. So I read on and discovered one paper pertaining to product design that I believe can explain irrational spending in our hobby today. The success of a product depends on how well it is designed and how well it appeals to its potential buyers. In 2015, a group of researchers, Christian, Martin and Christina, whose last names I shall not butcher, sought to define product design and its dimensions through extensive literature review and face-to-face interviews. Their underlying fundamental theory originates from Gestalt's theory, where people perceive objects as a whole instead of deconstructing them down to their respective elements. To put into context, a buyer's evaluation of whether a mechanical keyboard is well designed is done as a package, instead of looking at its individual components like keycaps, plates, or case. Now this is important because it means that it is possible that a person can have an overall good opinion about a product, even though some aspects of it may be subpar. Say if the blade is too flexible and gives a muted typing, but it looks gorgeous at the same time, he or she might still purchase it. Therefore, it is possible to break down the success of a mechanical keyboard into factors, or in other words, dimensions, to find out what are the most important ones that contribute to a well-received mechanical keyboard. Going back to the paper, they started off with 6 categories, narrowing it down to 3 dimensions: aesthetics, functionality, and symbolism. How and why, I leave it up to your own reading, linked down below. Functionality is what it is, how well the keyboard types. Is the PCB well designed? Is the case shorting the PCB when typing? The keyboard has to function without issues. Symbolism refers to the perceived message a product communicates regarding a buyer's self-image to both the consumer and others on the basis of visual elements. In other words, how does a product relate to the individual on a personal level? Does it evoke a feeling of awe or a feeling of disgust at a big McDonald's logo? What's really intriguing to me is their definition of aesthetics. Aesthetics is defined as an attribute of the product itself, or one that is created in the eye of the beholder. Or it can also be an attribute that causes a perception of beauty for the beholder. Simply put, an object can be inherently good looking without any subjective bias. Logical if you think about it. Would anyone in their right mind think that is aesthetic? I mean, if I took a really good and big one, I may feel that, but anyway, what they found was quite interesting. As mentioned, aspects of product design can be deconstructed into 3: aesthetics, functionality, and symbolism. And these 3 impact branding, purchase intention, word of mouth, and magnitude of spending. Branding is straightforward, how you, a consumer, perceive a brand like mode design. Purchase intention means how willing are you to pay for the product, while magnitude refers to obviously the amount you're willing to pay, budget or premium. Word of mouth in modern, simple terms means social media virality. How easily marketable is the product? Branding was found to have an indirect effect on product design, while the other 3 were found to have a direct effect. This means that the 3 primary dimensions affect intention, virality, and magnitude of spending directly, while branding is an additional channel through which they act. And this is academically known as a mediator. Think of branding as a booster towards good design, but a booster without a rocket goes nowhere. Moving on, symbolism directly and majorly affects purchase intention, more so than aesthetics and functionality, indicating that consumers have a strong will to freely express themselves through the act of purchasing the mechanical keyboard. The aesthetics aspect has the least direct effect, but contributes the most to brand attitude, which in turn has a bigger impact on purchase intention than virality. For example, if you see a really nice looking keyboard, but you then found out it is from a no-name designer, you are less likely to talk about it to other people and also unlikely to purchase it, even though it gives you a good brand impression of the designer. You might come back to him later, but for now, you won't buy the keyboard until he proves his worth through a second or third project. So all 3, aesthetics, functionality, and symbolism, have an equal impact on virality. That is to say, if the keyboard impresses in one or all of these, the consumer is equally likely to talk positive things about it to friends and family. At this point, you might be wondering, where is the magnitude of spending, which is what we are here for? Well, 2 things. Number 1, functionality contributes the most to how much a buyer is willing to pay. Say for example, you need a numpad, but the keyboard doesn't have one. Obviously, the amount you're willing to pay drops off a cliff. This explains why when a new feature like optical switches, 8K polling rate, or Hall effect switches first launched, there was so much hype and interest. Number 2 is the symbolic aspect. It turns out, people pay huge amounts of money for designs that speak to them on a personal level. No matter how well reviewers describe the aesthetics of a certain keyboard, no matter how trendy Hall effect switches or marbly sound profiles are, how the keyboard is designed symbolically is extremely important. You may or may not be conscious of these symbolic meanings, but they may be engraved into your being and affect you in ways you cannot imagine. Looking back on the keyboards that I bought and built, there's definitely a few that I want to keep because they meant something to me. Like the Fial that I built with Holy Pandas, the classic Teha build. I built it the exact same way purposefully because that was the video that introduced me to how nice keyboards can sound and look. Doing this deep dive also helped me gain a better understanding of why I made the purchases that I did. Every keyboard had a meaning, no matter how big or how small. It also helped me take a step back and properly gauge how convinced I am about a new product or a new keycap that I see on the internet before I actually fork my money out for it. Does it mean something to me? Did the looks win me over? What appealed to me is functions. Do other people feel the same way? That taught me empathy. At the end of the day, the key takeaway of this video is to tell you guys not to judge the barometer by which people use to justify their purchases. Everyone has a different reason why they fork out huge amounts of money to buy a keyboard, no matter how ridiculous the price tag may seem. And I think we should celebrate the person's purchase because obviously it brings joy to him or her. Instead of giving brash comments like, oh, you should have bought this or that, or there's something cheaper than GMK out there, oh, it's just another overpriced crap. Why not get curious enough to ask, what made you pay such a high price? You might make a new friend that way. Alright, I'm done. See ya.